All right, I think we can get this started. Welcome to session 12 of Knowledge Bites. My name is Alex Beck, and I am subbing in for Sarah today. One of the reasons why I'm here is because I'm the Workforce and Education Program Manager at the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. So I am near and dear to the topic we'll be discussing today. And I would like to introduce John Young from the Vermont Training Program, who will be talking about his program. The goal for today is to provide a high-level introduction to economic and workforce development programs, resources, and tools. You'll have an opportunity to see more, where you can get more in depth using this resource, and this will be a great resource for employers in your region. And here's the basic structure. What I'm going to do in just a moment is give the controls over to John, and he's going to talk a bit about his program. And then we'll wrap it up when he's done with some questions. Any questions about his program, workforce development, what next steps might be. But first, maybe a little bit about yourself, John, or do you want to dive right in?
No, thanks, Alex. Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Hopefully. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh, okay, thank you. My name is John Young, and I've been the director of the Vermont Training Program for a little over 2 years now. I've been in state government for the past 13 years, and before that was an engineering technician at IBM in Essex for a number of years. Lifelong Vermonter. I have a wife and 2 boys that are one's in senior in college and one is graduated and is working. So I'm very happy to talk to folks about the Vermont Training Program because it's clearly a passion of mine to work with employers and to try to strengthen up the workforce of Vermont. So Alex is going to hand off to me, and I will potentially get my PowerPoint started, and we'll go from there. So with this presentation, please feel free to ask questions along the way. I'm hoping that everybody can see my PowerPoint currently.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So the Vermont Training Program is kind of an odd name for truly a workforce development grant program. It's been around for over 30 years. I'm thinking 34, 35 years. And it's a very valuable program that is housed in the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and out of the Department of Economic Development. So we are a program of 1.5 state employees, and we work with employers and training providers around the state. So with this slide, hopefully we're always looking at training for jobs of tomorrow. We know there's many workforce challenges, and employers are always struggling to get the most qualified, qualified job seekers out there. But as technology increases and as our job workforce decreases, it's ever so challenging for employers to get on board. About 3 years ago, we are open up to all sectors, but really specializing primarily in advanced manufacturing. But I'll get into that as we go as far as sectors that we have used.
And real quick, I think Gary just hopped on. Welcome, Gary.
Yeah, hi there.
Can you see the slides and hear us well?
I can, yes. It's great. Thank you.
You didn't miss much, so I think we can keep chugging along.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Hi, Gary. Nice to meet you. I'm John.
Yeah, hey, John.
So the Vermont Training Program, we do offer performance-based workforce training grants, and I really looked at it that we actually partner with either employers and or training providers. So we actually don't go in to do any training, and it's one of those unique programs where we don't suggest the training that an employer might need for their business. So I will go in and work with employers to really try to figure out what their training needs are, what are their projects, new processes, new pieces of equipment, what are really their biggest challenges. And what the Vermont Training Program can do potentially is we can help up to 50% of the training cost for the pre-employment new hire and or incumbent training. So we pay the employers upon like a reimbursement once the training is complete. So it's not grant dollars where we just sign a check for X amount of dollars that are brought into. We set it up with a series of matrices to come up with a dollar amount based upon the need of the employer. So we can help out for on-site type training for up to 50% of the hourly rates of the qualified employee, which we'll get to in a little bit of what makes a qualified employee, or we can pay up to 50% of the cost of a vendor training. So if you really look at that, to defray up to 50% of the costs for an employer that's potentially already levied out a lot of money on either new equipment or have a new process that they're trying to work out, it can be very helpful to them. So the eligibility for the Vermont Training Program is that the employee trainees that we can help out with do need to be full-time. They do need to be working in Vermont. As you are a border area, we have many border areas because the state of Vermont's not that large. We certainly can help New York, New Hampshire, even Canadian residents that's crossing the border over working in one of our with our Vermont employers. So as long as that employer is claiming that workforce, we can help those individuals out as well. We can't help a Vermont citizen train in a different state or in Canada, though. So the types of training, again, pre-employment, which we don't really do a lot of pre-employment. It's always that difficulty with the guarantee of the post-training hire. We do a number of new employee trainings, and probably I would say the majority are incumbent employees that just need to upgrade skills. We're seeing a variety of asks today, again, as our workforce continues to shrink, as we're seeing baby boomers exiting the work world. Incumbent employees are now playing a lot more different roles than they were a number of years ago, including leadership type positions, learning new technology as it changes. So we are open to all sectors. We are going to get into where we have put some money into sectors the last fiscal year. The training program receives this year $1.2 million, and that's general fund state of Vermont money. So with that general fund state of the Vermont money, So with that money, we have to. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Can everybody?
How about now? Is it any better?
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I'm still getting a little bit of feedback, but that's okay as long as everybody can hear me. That's better. So, with the $1.2 million that are general fund money, we have a set of rules that we need to follow. And so that's a good part of my job is to making sure that we have, employers and training providers that follow that statutory language there. So these next few bullets are based upon that statutory language that Vermont Training Program funds, we need to supplement their training efforts and not replace. Again, it's the investment of your state tax dollars to make sure that they're being used as effectively as possible. So if an employer, for instance, loses 6 to 8 employees a year through sort of a natural loss, probably it's not the best investment for the state of Vermont to help to train those employees each time. So we're really looking for sort of project-based work that isn't just supplementing what an employer should normally be doing anyways. Of course, that it needs to be directly related to the employees' responsibilities. And we have a review process that we have some state and private folks that are on our review board to make sure that we're not duplicating other state or federal funds. So, for instance, Vermont Department of Labor, who has a number of federal funds as well as state funds, they're on the review board for every Vermont Training Program grant to make sure that we're not both funding the same exact project with 50% each of state monies. Department of Ed is also on our review committee for that as well because they potentially have training funds too. So part of our statute is the Joint Fiscal Office meets every 2 years. They met this past February, and they set what's called the Vermont livable wage, and that currently is at $13.16 per hour. And we need to make sure that all the employees that we can help with the Vermont Training Program, they need to be at or above this $13.16 by the end of the training grant, which typically can run up to 1 year. It's a rolling year of when the grant gets applied for. So unlike other grant funds, our grants are always in motion. So we have an 18-day business review process, but after that review process, the grant can typically, as long as it's approved, can start that very next day. So if somebody has a grant approved for December 14th, it can run all the way up to December 14th of the next year. The employers themselves need to qualify, and the last bullet on here is 8 benefits, and an employer needs to show to us or prove to us that they offer a minimum of 3 of those benefits. So that's all part of our due diligence as well for the eligibility. Here's a map of FY16, which is July 1st of 2016 to June 30th of 2017, and we had spent $1.3 million statewide. And how we collect our data is not necessarily by county, but more by a region of the state. So this will give you an idea of, your southeast area, not so bad statewide as far as receiving a good amount of the Vermont Training Program grant money. You can see your friends southwest of you, they didn't do as well. Although, this can change every year. It's not unusual for, the northwest and the central, just because of population and number of employers, that this is typically our most asked for areas of the state. So last year there was a total of 572 employees trained statewide with those dollars. So I talked about the sectors. This is a rundown of the sectors. The confusing part that I'll put out there is that there are some companies that can identify in a number of sectors. So somebody could really be in advanced manufacturing, but yet be in the forest products, right? They could be doing really manufacturing of a wood product of sorts. So it's really the self-identification of the employer. So, you know, even though advanced manufacturing clearly looks and appears that it's the majority of the money, I'm thinking that if we were to break that advanced manufacturing sector down, we could probably fill in more numbers around that area. We typically don't see much with the arts and culture, the education, and the tourism. Software development seems to be pretty high. Clean energy and efficiency, those we do have a couple of those grants this particular year. And really the big change from last year to this fiscal year that I'll be reporting on in January is our healthcare grants have gone up substantially. And certainly Alex Beck from Brattleboro realizes that because Brattleboro Memorial got a nice grant with us for training down in the Brattleboro area. So we are officially open to all sectors. I'm not going out doing sales to sectors, so this is really the sectors that have reached out saying, hey, we have some sort of change that we could use the state to help us with a workforce training, and it clearly might be, again, a new customer, a new process. There's a lot of companies that are in Vermont that are, as we know, competing internationally, that are really doing a lot of lean training, and so a lot of our money definitely goes to lean type training initiatives around the state. So the other piece of the Vermont Training Program that got approved in fiscal year 2016 was a carve-out percentage. So I'm allowed to use a percentage of the Vermont Training Program for what we call pipeline development activities. And so these activities can vary greatly. There's not a lot of language in the Vermont Training Program statutory language, but essentially it's work-based learning programs and activities with eligible employers to really introduce middle school, secondary, career technical, and even post-secondary school to either manufacturers or other regionally significant employers. This has been a little slow to get off the ground, but I think this current fiscal year, there's a good chance that we're going to use the whole carve-out for a couple bigger programs. So I think it's a great idea because this hopefully partnered up with our Act 77 with education is really going to help bridge those needs of our workforce of tomorrow, if you will. So we're kind of excited about this pipeline development money because I do think as we're seeing an out-migration of our young people, I'm hoping that this money can potentially hope to get these young people to understand, one, who my employers are in my area, and two, to get the employers to start thinking more as far as that their future workforce lives right around them and is going to school not too far from their employment. And finally, here's my contact information. my cell phone that I goes off quite often. It's 802-355-2725. The great thing with Vermont state employees, as long as you know their first name and their last name, and you type in vermont.gov, that'll be their email address to go there. I also have listed Kristen Zeiter, who's the business administrator. She works with the program about half of her year, half time, and she's really more on the invoicing parts and the web-based Intelligrants website that we have. So I can open it up to any questions.
I have a comment.
Okay.
And I would say that I was recently at a VC, and back is so bad. I'm sorry. Anyway, the topic that we were discussing was about minimum wage being raised, and all of the pushback around raising the minimum wage really came from the fact that retailers and smaller employers can't find a workforce that they don't have to train, and so if they have to start out this workforce with what, from my point of view, is just simple common sense training to be a good employee, then they find that they are paying a high rate to someone, or would be, coming in who is not capable of doing the job without being brought up to speed. And so that's a
Oh, I think you might have got cut off there at the end.
okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Anyway, going back, and I'll be quick, at a recent VCDA meeting, people who were there who are retailers or small business people were saying that they're concerned about raising the minimum wage in Vermont to $15 an hour. A big problem in that many of them find that when they recruit new employees, they are not really fit to work or do the job without a certain period of training and time and attendance and a whole bunch of those stupid kinds of things that we take for granted that apparently younger workforce doesn't totally understand are a problem. And so if you start out paying untrained, if you will, employee at $15 an hour, you've got to raise everybody else up, and it's a huge problem. And is there anything we can do about it? Are there programs even in schools that can, prepare people to be better workers?
Right. Alex, you'll take that.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to take a crack at that, and I think that what the first thing is that the BDCC is working with Bellows Falls Union and the other high schools in the area to work on some of those soft skills, those things that aren't technical based, and they are at times easier to train for, but also much more important to doing entry-level work. And so I think one thing that should be noted is that especially those who are looking either to enter work or are at low wage or are struggling with their wages, there are other training programs through the Department of Labor and vocational rehab to help support those individuals who might need a bit of remediation in terms of education as well. And so one interesting way to think about how to pursue funds is this employer-driven or is it job seeker-driven? And I think one thing for the Vermont Training Program is that this is very much an employer-driven. They're the ones setting those goals and what they need for training, and that's sort of why we require, or the program requires them to meet a certain wage standard. It's so that, you know, in promise for this training, this skilled worker, that they're being compensated appropriately for it.
Yeah, I think minimum is always difficult to figure out. I bet you about 50% of the businesses that I've met as of late have organically raised their minimum wages just because of competition. And so I think you're going to see wages go up just because of the competition for the workforce. Did everybody hear that okay? I'm getting quite a bit of feedback, or I was.
Thank you, John.
But I do think you know, it's a slippery slope. I think at some point you know, we need to make sure that employers are doing the best that they can be doing. But yet, I personally, I like to see the organic change based upon competition, because that's really the change that seems to be most accepted. Are there any other
questions?
Thank
you.
Yeah, I think maybe one last thing is how, especially with Gary and Mary Helen, you know, their organizations themselves wouldn't be looking for one of these grants, but what happens if they're meeting with an employer who might be interested? You know, how do you usually go about setting up those meetings? How would you want them to engage?
Sure, that's a great question. That's a great question. So not unlike Alex or other regional development folks, I'm usually very willing, if I'm able. I'm again, one-person show for the most part that travels the state. I'll be in lovely Bennington County all day tomorrow. So, you know, I'm happy to do joint visits with regional people to their employers. I like to make sure that I have a two-page qualifying description of the Vermont Training Program. And I think if any or all would like to email me, I would certainly be happy to email the two-pager. I think my biggest worry sometimes is meeting an employer that has some potential high expectations, and then once they see what the qualifications are, if they don't meet them, I don't think it's as positive as I'd like the conversation to be. So a lot of times I like to front load my visits with some basic information and some qualifications so that whomever I'm meeting with knows that. But either through a phone call or an email introduction is totally fine. Also, as Alex knows, very willing to do joint visits with people as well.
Nice.
You know, I understand Vermont is very diverse. And so I rely on your expertise on who's out there potentially for me.
Great. Are there any other questions, comments? You'll see I posted the next Knowledge Bite sessions, 12th of December, the 9th of January. But if there aren't any other questions about the Vermont Training Program, I think we can wrap it up.
Yeah, I think this is
a
great great tool to, for attracting businesses.
Good thing
Be able to offer. So
be able
thank
to
you for
offer.
that.
So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I think it's a great
You're welcome.
program.
I think it's a great program.
And certainly keep me in mind for any employers that you might be working with.
Yep.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. And this recording will be made available. And what I'll do is I'll make sure Sarah also has all of the documentation about the program, and she can blast it out to you all as well.
Great.
Great.
All right,
Thank
well,
you all.
Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you all.